Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take a truly dense stack of source material, tear it apart into its fundamental components, and then put it all back together so you walk away truly well-informed.
And today we are immersing ourselves in the inner workings of the Askhan Empire.
Right. A world that, based on the notes we have, it feels like this perfect collision of an obsessive administrative manual and a high-stakes military thriller.
That's exactly the tension we have to get into. I mean, we are diving into a culture that built its entire existence on ruthless efficiency, on codified law, and on creating the most professional soldiery known in its world.
But despite this incredible structure, the whole thing is unraveling.
Yeah.
And at just a frightening speed.
And the sources confirm it's not just simple political decay.
No, it's a two-pronged attack. You've got a crippling succession crisis at the very top, brought on by the illness of the heir, and then this insidious, ancient dark magic that you'll be pulling strings behind the scenes.
And they're desperate. They're trying to leverage this political chaos for their own survival.
So our mission today is to connect these two threads. We need to understand precisely how those rigid, hyper-efficient systems, the laws governing everything from military pay to bureaucracy, how they created the perfect environment for one ambitious general, Ullsaard, to seize power.
Okay, so let's unpack that. Material really gives us three interlocking narratives.
First, the failure of this ancient dark cult.
Then the struggle for the crown of the blood, which is kicked off by Prince Kalmud's sudden illness.
And finally, Ullsaard's completely opportunistic, but, and this is key, legally grounded political and military ascent.
So we have to begin where the empire begins, with its structure.
Exactly. Let's get into the foundations of Greater Ascor, the system, the law, and of course the legions.
If we really want to appreciate the scale of what Ullsaard eventually does, his treachery, you have to first understand the absolute foundations he's working to dismantle.
This is an empire built on standardization.
Completely. Driven by the founder, King Askhus, more than 2 centuries ago. Askhus understood that to control all these disparate provinces, Ascor, Ener, or Sua, Okar, and so on, you needed absolute uniformity.
Especially in how his armies moved and how his workforce was regulated.
So when we look at the administrative structure, the big question is, how does an empire of that size make sure that a soldier in Masra is on the same schedule as a bureaucrat back in the capital in Ascor?
And the answer is an enforced, standardized tempo.
It's all built around legion routines. They established a rhythm that governs the lives of every single citizen. The day is, well, it's 32 hours long.
32 hours. That's a unique choice.
It is, and it's meticulously measured by water clocks and the burning of these precisely made watch candles.
And those 32 hours are divided into 8 watches, right?
That's correct. 4 hours per watch, 8 watches total. You have dawn watch, low watch, noon watch, high watch, then dusk watch, howling watch, midnight watch, or just mid-watch and grave watch.
What's fascinating is the mechanism of enforcement. It's not just a recommendation.
No, not at all. They use signal patterns, bells and horns, to ensure conformity across every single fort and city.
So it's not just about time, it's about synchronized behavior. If that bell rings for the start of High Watch, every soldier, every watchman, every laborer across 6 different provinces knows exactly what they should be doing.
It eliminates that local inefficiency you see in so many other sprawling ancient empires.
You're creating a predictable, manageable human resource base.
And that military origin, like you said, it extends to their physical measurements.
Yeah.
They're all predicated on war efficiency. The Askhan mile, for instance, isn't based on some abstract celestial measurement.
It's practical.
Purely practical. It's defined by the distance a legion marching at a regulated pace covers in 1/10 of a full watch. It averages out to about 2.5 miles per hour.
Which makes the logistical calculation of trip movements, supply chains, all of it, completely predictable for a general like Ullsaard.
You know exactly how many watches it will take to get from point A to point B. It doesn't matter what the terrain is like.
And that precision goes right down to the soldier's personal kit.
Absolutely. They standardize equipment weight. They call it the pack for war gear, the heft for spear weight, and even small tactical distances, like the cast, which is exactly 70 paces.
The reliable range of a thrown weapon.
Every single metric is tied to maximizing war efficiency and just minimizing any ambiguity.
It's the ultimate militarized meritocracy. So what agency sits on top of this standardized structure? Who's managing the economy and the law?
That brings us to the Brotherhood.
And they are far more than just a religious sect.
Oh, much more. They're the central nervous system of the empire. the core administrative and legal arm, their omnipresence is absolutely key to how this whole thing functions.
And they run the economic engine, they control the currency.
Yes. Based on a metric system, you have the Askharin, which is gold, sindins, a silver alloy, and then innits, or tins. But here is where they exercise their silent power. Individual provincial governors and local nobles, they technically retain the right to mint their own coinage. It's sort of a nod to provincial autonomy.
But the Brotherhood controls the appraisal.
Precisely. They don't have to control the physical minting process. They just need to control the value and legitimacy of every coin in circulation.
So that gives them this silent chokehold over the entire economy.
Exactly. If they decide a governor's coin is slightly under standard, that governor is instantly, politically and economically crippled.
We also see this fascinating detail about resources. Iron is rare, it's highly valuable, and it's explicitly forbidden as coinage.
Which speaks volumes. It tells you about resource scarcity and the necessity of keeping that valuable metal dedicated entirely to high-end military applications or infrastructure, not trivial transactions.
And beyond finance, their administrative functions are just exhaustive. Levying trade taxes, adjudicating nearly all civil and criminal disputes.
Banking, managing essential infrastructure like waterways and roads, and, crucially, supplying and paying the legions.
They are the bureaucracy incarnate.
And their authority is backed by the king himself. The High Brother, currently a man named Wudan, advises the king directly. So while a solitary brother in some remote province might not have the legal authority to seize property on his own.
Defying him is seen as defying the king's will.
And the repercussions are always severe. They are the mechanism by which the king's absolute rule is translated into mundane, enforceable order.
Okay, so moving from the bureaucracy to the political power structure, you have the king at the top ruling absolutely. He's advised by the High Brother and this Council of Governors.
And the provinces are essentially semi-autonomous states. They're leased to appointed governors like Nemtun and Okar, or Alon and Ener, who have to pay taxes and supply legions in return.
This brings us to the unique legal and military rights granted to the king's direct descendants, the blood.
Yes, and this lineage, this concept, forms the absolute foundation of the current conflict.
So what are those specific, unique rights? What makes them so powerful?
Every member of the blood is granted dual ranks. They are a prince and a general by birthright.
So they're both politicians and high-ranking military commanders from the moment they're recognized.
Right, and that means they possess absolute legal judgment, which can only be overruled by the king himself.
That dual rank, that's the key structural flaw, isn't it? It just inherently sows the seeds of future military rebellion.
It's the ultimate systemic paradox, because the people who have the political ambition also have direct legal control over the military assets.
And that military power is amplified by their control over resources.
Immensely. A prince of the blood has the absolute right to requisition any resource troops, food, materials from a provincial governor, and they can bypass all normal bureaucratic channels. Think of Nemtun, who is both a prince of the blood and a governor. His massive past military powers stemmed from this non-negotiable right to just take what he needed.
But the sources highlight an intentional curb on this power. The founders understood the danger here.
A vital point that's often overlooked. If a prince chooses to accept a governorship, they must relinquish the title of general. And their command is restricted only to the legions directly attached to their province. This specific law was designed to prevent unruly members of the blood from accumulating both military field authority and civic administrative power at the same time.
It's an explicit mechanism to maintain central control.
Right. Which brings us directly to the current succession crisis. King Lutar is on the throne. His eldest son and heir is Prince Kalmud, who is, he's ill with a devastating lung disease.
So if Kalmud dies, the crown passes to his young son, Erlon, a boy who would need a regent.
And then we have Prince Alun, the second son, who is General Ullsaard's critical patron.
The stability of the entire empire rests on the healthy continuity of that eldest line.
Kalmud's illness is the physical catalyst that throws this perfectly rational Askhan system into total political chaos, and it opens the door for the ambitious and the irrational to exploit that vacuum.
So if the Brotherhood is the nervous system, the legions are the muscle and the teeth. Let's look at the structure of this fighting force that Ullsaard commands.
King Askhos's great innovation was creating a truly professional standing army. They were sworn directly to the king, salaried and equipped, rather than relying on, feudal levies. This standardization is why the legions are so formidable.
The foundational unit is the company, 160 men, designed specifically for the phalanx, and there is no distance between the fighting men and their officers.
That's crucial for their reliability. All officers, sergeants, third captains, second captains, they are numbered within that 160. They fight in the rank, sharing the same immediate danger as the common soldier.
And a legion, the larger unit.
That consists of 10 to 30 companies, so it totals around 4,000 to 5,000 men, led by a first captain who handles the grand strategy and command.
And above the first captain sits the general, Ullsaard's rank.
Appointed for life, holding that critical pseudo-blood status regarding law and command, and totally exempt from any provincial governor's orders. This legal exemption is what allows Ullsaard to march his army across provincial lines without Nemton or Elan being able to legally stop him.
So the Askhan legionnaire's life is defined by this brutal, yet in a way generous, social contract.
The rewards are significant. Professional pay in coin, salt, and produce, guarantees high-quality training and equipment, and housing and food that's far superior to that of a common laborer. I mean, they're the elite class.
And the reward for death is perhaps the greatest loyalty mechanism of all.
Absolutely. A generous war pension. It's extended for 60 years, 3 full generations, for the family if the soldier is killed in the service of the king.
That promise of generational security creates unwavering loyalty. The soldier sacrifices his life, and the state guarantees the future of his entire lineage.
But the flip side of that guarantee, the ultimate price, is maybe the most chilling detail in all the sources. It just defines the core efficiency of Askhan culture.
The policy of military euthanasia.
It speaks to the absolute priority placed on efficiency and the elimination of waste. A soldier who survives grievous, disabling wounds that would leave him permanently crippled, is immediately slain by his comrades, usually by slitting the throat.
The rule is cold and absolute. They have to prevent him from becoming a crippled parasite suckling at Askor's bosom.
That detail defines their culture more than any other law or coin. It shows that the loyalty isn't just to the king, it's to the system. The men accept this contract because they know the system is taking care of their families, and the system cannot tolerate inefficiency or vulnerability.
It creates this self-regulating, self-disciplining force where the highest value is just utility.
A soldier's utility ends the moment they become a permanent burden. And this brutal logic is what Ullsaard relies on. He commands men who are willing to sacrifice everything for the security of their family lineage, men who accept the ultimate cold calculation.
And to facilitate their campaigns, they have all this specialized logistics and equipment.
Beyond the standard spear, bronze breastplate, kilt, and helmet, they use specific gear for regional campaigns. Hooded woolen cloaks, tarred waterproof sacks for cold weather operations, and of course the specialized war beasts.
The Mosren Kolubrid, these snake-like mounts for heavy cavalry.
And the Ailer, which we'll definitely revisit. Savage, cat-like mounts bred by the Brotherhood for speed and terror, used by generals and nobility as symbols of status and pure controlled aggression.
Okay, so we've established the machine. Standardized, efficient, and utterly brutal. It's a rational, quantifiable empire. Now we have to introduce the force that acts as the ultimate external stressor, the hidden, irrational threat lurking just beneath the foundations.
We pivot entirely. From the measurable world of bronze breastplates and watch candles to the chaotic ancient world of the Ullsaard, a dying cult whose very survival depends on manipulating the political crisis we just laid out.
And their temple is a perfect reflection of their decay. It's nameless, built on 7 decaying colonnaded levels, surrounded by desolation, dust, toxic sulfurous gases. Black smoke stains the white stone. It sounds like a festering wound on the landscape of the empire.
And presiding over this decay is the high priest, Lakiri. He is a wraith-like figure, his body covered in this dense, life-sustaining web of scars and tattoos, astrological and alchemical symbols all linked together. He's ruled for an age, eking out his life with these ancient, parasitic sorceries.
And the core problem is that this power source is failing. The life force, or this parasitic yet sustaining miasma the temple draws from creation, it's thinning.
The sorceries that are perpetuating Lakiri and his masters, the Ullsaard, are fading. This explains their sudden, desperate intervention in the succession crisis. They are on a timer. If the magic fails entirely, they just cease to exist.
And the Ullsaard masters themselves are truly terrifying. The sources call them specters of limbo, ghastly creatures devoid of physical form or rational thought.
And they only coalesce briefly upon an altar that's fused from black volcanic rock and primordial bones.
Their communication mechanism is profoundly unsettling.
It is. They don't use language. They speak as pure concept, or sometimes as a low, ominous bass throbbing you feel on the edges of sleep. To receive communication that is pure concept, not words, not images, but raw meaning, it suggests a level of existence beyond human comprehension.
Which makes their intentions difficult to interpret but impossible to ignore.
It also means any communication has to be received and translated by Lakiri, the high priest, which gives him immense, if fragile, power. To gauge the urgency, Lakiri consults the Huyakutaka, the second most powerful master.
And the prophecy they deliver is stark and immediate.
Distant, sacrifice, seek king, child, restore. They need someone, a king and a child, to restore their waning essence, and they demand urgency. Seek fast.
So the political crisis isn't just an opportunity for them, it's a necessity for their continued existence.
Exactly. And since their survival hinges on finding this specific king and child, and since their primary agent, High Brother Udanon, seems unable to stabilize the succession, they have to turn to these dark, scrying rituals to get information.
And this is where the magic gets intensely visual and deeply gruesome.
The cost of knowledge is extreme. To get information about the current state of the crown, Lakiri uses the youngest, fittest acolytes. Shaven-headed, naked, newly carved with runes, ready to be sacrificed for intelligence.
Let's detail that first ritual of scrying. It's a terrifying process of transformation.
The acolytes' faces are carved with circles and swirls, cut through the skin and fat, but meticulously avoiding the muscle. When Lakiri touches the wounds, the blood bubbles up and reforms the face into a mask of blood before the features distort and settle into something else. A patrician nose, dark eyes.
And the body is then animated by an outside influence, becoming a puppet for the masters to convey messages.
And the message confirms their worst fears about the political instability. Prince Alun is questioning Kalmud's fitness as heir, though King Lutar has denied him. And crucially, the Ulaniwi's existing agents, the Brotherhood, are working, maybe too slowly, to restore Kalmud's health.
They're aiming for a stable succession that presumably serves the Ulaniwi's long-term interests.
Stability is essential for their parasitic function. Chaos is messy, but the process is failing. They need more clarity, and they need it faster. This prompts the drastic step, the intervention of the Eyes of Gold.
This ritual is, it's next-level horror. It's designed for world-spanning vision going far beyond simple political intelligence.
Absolutely. A new acolyte is brought in. His eyelids are pinned open. A sirkir, a subordinate, carves minuscule lines and coils around the pupils. The tension is palpable. Lakiri clasps a crucible containing bubbling, molten gold, his own ancient scars heating up and releasing these wisps of smoke.
And then Eric drips the molten gold directly into the fine tracery carved around the acolyte's eyeballs, gilding them permanently.
Gilding the eyeballs with molten metal. It's an incredible, horrifying image.
And what power does this grant them?
The new golden-flecked eyes grant unparalleled vision across the entire empire, bypassing physical limitations. They can see storms gathering over Mejalnada, the daily chariot races in the capital, and most critically, they see Ullsaard's legions.
This is the moment Ullsaard is marked. They see his force marching coldwards, away from the capital, led by a large man on a gray and black cat, Black Fang, carrying 5 golden icons.
They see the precise instrument of chaos that is moving outside the control of their existing agent, Udan.
And that sighting confirms that the crisis is escalating beyond their capacity to manage through subtle administrative control. Udan has failed to keep Ullsaard in check.
Therefore, Lakiri takes the ultimate unprecedented step.
He leaves the temple, and he does it by possessing the body of High Brother Udan.
For the first time in over 200 years, Lakiri abandons his withered flesh and just moves the spirit of Udanon aside, commandeering the body of the most powerful administrative and spiritual figure in the entire empire.
This action signals the true existential urgency of the crisis. The irrational ancient threat has now physically manifested in the heart of the rational Askhan administration.
And he intends to enforce the Great Plan and remind King Lutar of the grave consequences should he fail the masters.
So, Ullsaard, the general, has been identified by these dark masters as the key destabilizing force. Let's pivot to his world. Ullsaard is an Anarian native, a general allied with Prince Alun, a professional soldier who is also a man of complexity, 3 wives, 3 sons.
And when the succession crisis erupts, Ullsaard is engaged in the difficult Mecca campaign. He's fighting these savage, desert-dwelling Makani tribes who use behemoths and stone weapons.
And it's a campaign that beautifully illustrates the limits of Askhan logistical efficiency.
Right. What were the unique challenges of Mecca that frustrated this perfectly structured Askhan military machine?
Well, the Makani use hit-and-run tactics, retreating into the vast desert. The Afghan legions couldn't follow because their standard logistical footprint, which was designed for temperate zones, just couldn't be sustained. The critical limiting factor wasn't the enemy, it was the water holes.
Each sparse water source could only reliably sustain 2,000 or 3,000 men.
So an Afghan army of, say, 15,000 men would have to split into 6 separate commands, potentially months apart, which makes them vulnerable to isolation and attrition. The desert negated the Afghan advantage of massed infantry.
Exactly. So Ullsaard's plan was patient. He was just going to wait for an unfinished bridge to be built so he could stockpile supplies for a proper, large-scale offensive. He acknowledged that overwhelming logistical power was the only way to beat the desert itself.
And before his summons back to the capital, we get a closer look at his war mounts, the Ailers. We mentioned they were savage, but the details provided reveal just how controlled that savagery has to be.
They are magnificent, brutal creatures. Bred by the Brotherhood from mountain lions, they are so vicious that their heads have to be covered by these spiked, blinkered metal masks when they're traveling or stabled just to keep them docile.
And Ullsaard himself has to drug his 3 mounts, Blackfang, Render, and Thunderbolt, with special drugs made by the Brotherhood when he's on the move.
He even mentions he has never seen an unmasked Ilir. He says it's not good for anyone that had.
It's controlled chaos, a lethal symbol of Askhan power. And the fact that all trained Ailers are female, that suggests a deeper breeding knowledge held solely by the Brotherhood.
So Ullsaard is summoned back by Alan about Kalmud's illness, and this immediately thrusts him into direct conflict with Nemtin.
Prince of the Blood, governor of Okar, brother to King Lutar, conqueror of Anrar, Nemtin is the Old Guard, a pure-blood rival.
The confrontation is immediate and personal. Nemtin views Ullsaard, the Anarian commoner who rose to general, as a total upstart.
He mocks Ullsaard's achievements in Mecca as battles against half-hearted, broken warriors.
And Ullsaard, in turn, mocks Nemtin for being too old and too fat to fight. This isn't just about personalities, though. It's about competing for the lucrative command of the Greenwater campaign, which is a potential stepping stone to greater political power.
And the royal herald, Noran, intentionally mentions Kalmud's illness during this exchange. He confirms to Ullsaard that Nemtin was just feigning indifference. He was already aware of the heir's condition.
Meaning the power struggle had already begun in secret?
This political maneuvering forces Ullsaard to seek legitimacy outside of the king's immediate favor, and Alan provides it. The critical legal loophole, the general's right.
An ancient, forgotten Askhan law. A general who defeats 100,000 enemies has the right to nominate a campaign of his choice for a season.
This is the legal foundation for Ullsaard's entire rebellion.
It is. That law was initially conceived to prevent successful commanders from constantly encroaching on each other's profitable war zones. It was a check on the ambition of successful generals, designed to keep them separate.
And Ullsaard is weaponizing this long-forgotten piece of statute law against the entire political establishment.
It's brilliant. He realizes that Nemtun, Kasuas, and King Lutar can't simply ignore a legal claim backed by this forgotten precedent.
He also recognizes the political calculus. An Alan kingship would endorse conquest, which suits his ambition for the rich Salforian campaign, while a conservative Kalmud or Irlan succession would only focus on internal stability.
The general's right gives him a public legal reason to defy the court without technically committing treason. Yet.
So, Ullsaard marches the 13th Legion back to Ask and sets up this visible camp outside the wall, lending undeniable weight to his legal claim. He moves from personal ambition to a legal challenge.
But King Lutar delivers a crushing blow that shifts the conflict from legality to legitimacy. He publicly reveals that Ullsaard is his bastard son.
Which sounds like it should have granted Ullsaard instant status. Why didn't it save him?
Because Lutar delivered the news not to embrace him, but to repudiate him. The king refused to support Ullsaard's legal claim, using the revelation only to increase the public shame of the general's ambition.
So his lineage is revealed not as a promotion, but as a political weapon used against him.
And instantly, the Brotherhood, likely now coordinated by Lakiri in Udon's body, strikes back using social chaos. They incite a hostile mob on the royal way with black hoods moving through the crowd, no doubt whispering words of encouragement.
This is the rational bureaucracy using calculated street violence.
The confrontation escalates immediately. Ullsaard's professional legionnaires, the 13th, They react perfectly to their training. They form a tight phalanx, lock shields, and violently disperse the mob, killing citizens.
So Ullsaard has now crossed the threshold. He has spilled Askhan blood on the streets of the capital in an act of open defiance.
The coup fails, and the immediate consequence is an assassination order from the king. Ullin reveals the truth, and Ullsaard, Ullun, and the legions have to retreat through the wall, using the green water to reach an heir for sanctuary under the pretense of preparing for the Selphorian campaign.
The exile plan is meticulously military. Ullsaard chooses Luraston, a remote fishing town in Enair, his native province, where many of his 13th Legion originated. This is a critical detail.
Right. He can legally disband and remuster them easily, maintaining their professional loyalty under the flag of the Selphorian campaign.
But the winter in Enair turns brutal. They are chased through Nalinor and Ursua by Nemton and Alon. And while in Enair, Ullsaard reflects on the difference between the capital and his home province.
He's home. He notes the persistence of old tribal beliefs. Holly wreaths, rune charms, lore mothers like Freyna, despite the Brotherhood's stringent suppression of local deities. Ullsaard appreciates this real, something genuine feel of the old ways compared to the artificial Askhan pomp. It highlights his own divided loyalties.
But the true terror of that winter isn't the cold or the pursuit. It's the magical affliction engineered by the Ulanui and the Brotherhood. This is targeted chaos, designed specifically to break the morale of Ullsaard's professional legions.
The manifestations are gruesome and calculated to terrify. The men suffer sporadic attacks, bloody vomiting, blindness, deafness, and their bones become so brittle they snap with the slightest pressure.
And adding to the physical terror, they hear sinister voices in the air, driving them towards a psychological breakdown.
The combination of 38 days of constant snow, crippling sickness, and death, it robs the army of over 2,500 men. It's a catastrophic blow to a professional army whose strength is its cohesion. Morale collapses, and the men begin questioning Ullsaard's leadership.
This is the Ulanui's success. The rigid Askhan system, which could handle a siege or a desert campaign, could not cope with a magically induced pandemic that undermined the very physical structure of its soldiers.
And the pressure leads to this devastating internal strike. Ullsaard's eldest son, Nurik, a man obsessed with personal influence, convinces his father to eliminate Prince Ullun.
Ullun is now a major liability, a rival for the crown, potentially unstable, and a target for the king.
This is Ullsaard's family ruthlessness at its absolute peak. They use the most specialized of Askhan tools, the allure. Yurik sneaks into the tent and deliberately removes the blinkered mask from Ullun's Ailer, Destiny, leaving just one strap.
The mechanism is cold-blooded and brilliant. Ellen approaches Destiny in the dark, and the unmasked Ailer enters a berserk frenzy, immediately killing its master. It rips out his eye, tears into his shoulder, and snaps his spine.
It's the perfect, untraceable assassination. Ullsaard removed his patron, the Prince of the Blood, who provided his only remaining legal link to the crown, thereby eliminating the only person who could potentially claim the kingship over him.
The Prince of the Blood was eliminated by a beast, bred by the Brotherhood, controlled by a general, and executed by his own son.
And the magical intervention culminates with Norin's sacrifice. Norin, the royal herald, having already lost his wife and child to the harsh conditions, sees the final attempt to destroy Ullsaard.
He sees the legionnaires marching to assassinate Ullsaard, men displaying the physical sign of magical coercion, gold-tinted eyes.
He shouts a warning, is severely wounded, but saves Ullsaard's life. Norin's final act of loyalty costs him everything, but it confirms to Ullsaard that the threat is now both political and magical, and it requires total revolutionary change.
With Ellen dead and Norin dying, Ullsaard recognizes his legitimacy is gone. His legions are suffering. He has no Prince of the Blood left to sponsor him. His final move has to target the core loyalty of the Askhan legionnaire itself.
He completely overturns the Askhan social contract. Addressing his loyal legions, the 13th, 5th, 10th, and 12th Ullsaard grants all his men ownership rights to the land they conquer.
This is massive. Previously, they could only lease or purchase land from the crown, which kept them perpetually dependent on the central administration.
By granting them outright ownership, he's effectively making them landed nobles and leaseholders overnight. He's offering them actual wealth and status, something the rigid Askhan system denied them in exchange for temporary safety.
He has bought their absolute irrevocable loyalty.
He tells them they will follow him to the sea and sail for Asgore to claim the crown. The general's right is abandoned. The king's law is now irrelevant. The coup has become a conquest fueled by the promise of revolution.
So Ullsaard has officially shed his last vestiges of loyalty and has promised his men an empire of their own. He now executes his plan with this ruthless, opportunistic efficiency, beginning with the conquest of the strategic port city of Megalnada.
His approach perfectly reflects his cold, calculating nature. His first alliance is purely transactional, with Anglin Pereusis, a debt guardian, and a landship captain. Anglin is pure ambition, switching loyalty based entirely on where the most profit lies.
Anglin initially joins the local Salforian rebel, Eurasius the Free, hoping to profit from the instability. But the moment Ullsaard shows up with his legions, Anglin realizes who holds the real power and immediately switches allegiance.
And Ullsaard uses this new information to trap the local resistance later. He forces a confrontation with Eurasius, offering an alliance not as a gesture of partnership, but as a test.
When Eurasius refuses, "My blood will be cold before I share air with Askhan dogs," Ullsaard reveals his overwhelming military force. 30,000 men marching into the valley. Eurasius is left with no choice but to confront impossible odds.
The takeover of Megalnada itself is a military masterclass in stealth and deception. It leverages local culture and intelligence.
The sources reveal incredible planning. Ullsaard sends an infiltrated legion, Urswins disguised as Salforian rebels, into the city during the massive midwinter festival of spirits, relying on the chaos of the holiday.
And Norin's second captain, Needon, provided the critical intelligence. He timed the operation precisely for the second hour of midwatch, right after the guard routine changes.
They used specific, disguised weapons, clumsy, curved blades, bought from Anglin, to maintain the illusion that this was a chaotic, localized rebel uprising, not a professional Askhan invasion.
The objectives were strategic. Secure key infrastructure, grain stores, armories, treasuries, and eliminate key leaders immediately. By dawn, the city was under control, and the local populace still believed they had witnessed a bloody but local rebellion.
And Anglin is immediately rewarded. Ullsaard appoints him governor of Megalnada, making him ruler of a new province. It proves to his men that his promises of land and power are not empty.
Angle, however, knows his fortune is now completely dependent on Ullsaard's success as a pretender.
With Megalnada secured, Ullsaard pivots to the necessary logistics for the final strike on Ascor, which requires a massive fleet to bypass the capital's imposing wall defenses.
He tasks his sons, Jatar and Uric, with building this massive fleet, 30 warships and 650 transports in Askira Mazra. Uric's ambitious nature drives the work pace, and Jatar suggests using Legion lanterns to extend the shifts into the night, increasing production by a fifth.
This is the new, vigorous efficiency Ullsaard promised.
But the resistance, likely the lingering influence of the Brotherhood or loyalist agents, it continues. The effort is hampered by unrest and deliberate sabotage, including 3 lamp-equipped ships being set ablaze.
So Ullsaard arrives and demonstrates his new style of rule. He orders the 13th Legion to search the entire town for the Brotherhood and malcontents, finding masks and scrolls. But the solution isn't just punitive.
No, it's systemic pressure. This public intimidation is used to force the local population to police themselves and meet the production schedule. Ullsaard's message is clear. Failure to deliver the ships means the 13th Legion stays. It's an immediate, efficient, and violent system of enforced labor and order.
The final campaign begins. Ullsaard marches his army into Nalinor. Nemten's army retreats toward the wall, but Ullsaard catches Nemten and Allen. This brings him face to face with his greatest dynastic and political rival.
Nemten, the conqueror, the prince of the blood, he surrenders. He tries to negotiate, believing King Lutar won't barter for him, and offers to hold his governorship of Okar under Ullsaard's new regime. He's trying to apply the old rules of political accommodation to Ullsaard.
And Ullsaard's response is the definitive statement that the old order is dead.
Ullsaard doesn't grant him a clean death or a quick execution. He runs Nemten through with his spear, clubs him across the face, and then unleashes Blackfang, the Allure, on the wounded Prince of the Blood, completing the brutal, humiliating, and irreversible elimination of the old, compromised system of the blood.
There is no quarter for those who represent the past.
None! Finally, Ullsaard faces King Lutar's forces, led by General Kosuas, outside Ask across a stretch of farmland. Kosus is the loyal, aging general, and, we learned, Ullsaard's mother's former lover, which adds this layer of tragic family history to the confrontation.
Kosus approaches Ullsaard alone for a final, formal duel. He acknowledges Ullsaard's strategic skill, but, honor-bound, he refuses to surrender his legion's veterans of the Greenwater campaign to a usurper.
And Ullsaard kills Kossuth in the duel, removing the final loyalist military obstacle. This duel is a perfect snapshot of Ullsaard's cold-blooded philosophy.
It really is.
Ullsaard reflects on the brutal logic of conquest. His growing empire needs to be filled with new vigor, and he feels no guilt, believing he is carrying out Askos's work by strengthening the empire through necessary violence.
He sees himself as a purifier, a professional soldier who understands the system's utility better than its compromised founders.
The ultimate professional soldier, claiming the crown of the blood not through legal right, but through the cold-blooded execution of rivals and the weaponization of the very efficiency the empire was built on.
So if we synthesize all of these dense and, frankly, brutal details, what stands out most clearly is that central tragic tension of the Askhan Empire. The clash between its highly organized, rational imperial administration
The standardized laws, the professional legions, the Brotherhood systems.
and the irrational forces of ancient prophecy and just unchecked ambition.
The irony is absolutely profound. The Askhan system, designed for ultimate self-sustaining efficiency and expansion, provided the very tools that allowed Ullsaard to dismantle it.
The legal loophole of the general's right, the perfect logistical standardization, the unwavering professionalism of the legions.
It all enabled the state's own catastrophic self-destruction when ambition was paired with a catastrophic succession failure.
And Ullsaard's rise, while driven by military strategy, was undeniably aided by the underlying magical rot. The Ullanois' desperation and their targeted magical intervention. That ancient power introduced a systematic chaos that the rational bureaucracy and the general's military training just could not logically counter.
It forced Ullsaard into a revolutionary action he might not have otherwise taken.
And this creates a truly fascinating philosophical question about the nature of power and destiny in this world. Ullsaard won the crown by using the empire's own strict laws and efficient violence against itself.
But let's revisit the Ullanois' prophecy. It demanded a king and a child to restore their fading essence through sacrifice.
Right. Ullsaard has claimed the crown through extreme violence and treachery, believing he's the new engine of the empire. But given the desperate ancient forces that set this entire conflict in motion, here's the question we leave you with.
Did General Ullsaard truly become the vigorous leader doing Askos's work, or was he merely the necessary, blood-soaked sacrifice, the king who must kill his rivals and destabilize the throne for the ultimate restoration of the dark, ancient masters he didn't even know existed?
A terrifying thought for a general who believes he is solely in control of his destiny.
It is.
Indeed. We'll leave you there to consider the price of ultimate efficiency when the machine begins to run on ancient dark fuel. Thank you for joining us for the deep dive.